Hi guys, welcome to Purple Angles. I'm Stephanie,
And I'm Natalie.
where we bring back healthy conversations.
And the beauty of divergent opinions.
Today, we're speaking about.
Feminism versus femininity.
Let's dive into the subject. So, Natalie, can you tell us a bit more about what is all this? What is femininity? What is feminism?
Yes, well, this is a subject that's very dear to my heart. That's something that I've kind of been looking into a lot in the past, I would say year and a half. Just for those that don't know me, I'm a young professional. So I work in the pharmacy industry, and I also work in the medical sales industry. So I've been in this kind of environment for a very long time, the feminist environment. I've kind of grew up in this world. And the past year, I've kind of started questioning feminism and femininity and what the difference was actually when it comes to that. I also had to face it within my personal life. And I'm happy to kind of have this conversation with you today.
Amazing. I actually have been through the same into this high achieving type A workaholic woman. So when we get back to the essence, we start realizing things. And I think that's what we want to share a bit with the audience today. So I think we should dive into the definitions because I didn't really understand the difference between femininity versus feminism. And I thought I was a feminist. Then I'm like, wait a second, what is that? And so when I started diving into the definitions, that's where I'm like, oh, wait a second, something's not adding up in how I'm feeling versus the energies versus all of this and all the difference. I think before we even start, we should mention that what we're speaking about is energy and it's human based, not women versus men or anything. I don't know if you want to dive into this a bit more.
Yes, definitely. I think for me, when we talk about femininity, and I'm going to start with this specific description, let's say. So, femininity for me is actually the attributes of the feminine essence. So, the feminine essence is not something that is specifically for women or specifically for men. It's an energy that both women and men have. It's just that the ratio is going to be a little bit different in men and in women most of the time. So, just to kind of explain a little bit the background of this. Most of the time, most men will have a higher masculine energy than a feminine energy. And most women will have a higher feminine energy than a masculine energy. Some men might have 50-50, some women might have 50-50. It might be also the opposite. So the balance of the two energies is what's important here. And so because most women tend to have a higher feminine essence, I will refer to that as, femininity. So the feminine essence, what is it at the core? It's everything that's going to describe femininity. So flow, intuition, chaos, also because women, feminine essence tend to be like that. I think there's one saying that I read, and I think it actually explains very, very well the difference between feminine and masculine essence. And the masculine is the mountain and the feminine is the ocean. So you can imagine what the ocean be, right? Okay, what the ocean can be. So it can be very, very calm. It can be very nurturing. It can be very soothing, but it can also be very chaotic. It can be very deep. And I think that describes women, feminine women or femininity very well. Now, when it comes to feminism, it's a little bit different. What is your intake on feminism? If I would ask you, what do you think is feminism?
Feminism, in my opinion, and what I understand from it, it started a while ago where it was really an equal right to between men and women on a political, social, and economic level. So equal pay, right to vote, all of these things. And now where it has led it's the feminist movement, in my opinion, and the way I perceive it, it's a little bit of balancing the masculine and pressuring more on the masculine and having that, trying to bring the equal energies where it's not necessarily, it's like a societal pressure trying to bring an equal. Now I'm diving into something. Well,
That's okay. No, that's gonna be the conversation for another podcast.
yeah.
I think what we need to be when we talk about feminism and the feminist movement, I think it's important to know the history behind it. So
Yeah.
if we go back into the history of feminism and we look at when it started around the 1910 year.
Mhm.
So back in the days, that's when it initially started. It was more a political movement. So that's when women were fighting for the equal rights to vote. That's how it initially started, which I think is amazing, because of course we definitely want women to be able to vote as much as men. Now this evolved, and then around the 1960s, 1970s, then women started burning their bras on the streets. That's when the biggest kind of movement for feminism happened, and they were fighting for social and economic rights. So they wanted to be able to work, they wanted to be paid equally as men, and that's something that is extremely valuable today, as we know. And now it kind of transitioned. Now we're talking more about modern feminism, because as we know, we're able to vote, we can work whatever job we want to work. I'm talking, of course, in the Western society. I'm not talking in the world in general, but I'm gonna, focus on the Western society where we live. And then we have modern feminism, which is, I think, is creating a lot of confusion in women today. Even if I ask around, and if I ask ladies of different ages around me, and I tell them, do you consider yourself to be a feminist? Without even asking them if they believe, what is feminism? And I get yes, I get no's, and I get, well, I don't know, actually. So I think a lot of women are kind of confused of what is modern feminism. Is that something we stand behind? It feels like we should be standing behind it. I think a lot of women feel kind of odd saying that they're not feminists, or that they don't believe in feminism or the modern feminism. So I think it's an important conversation to have, because it has transitioned, it has changed a lot. It is impacting our workforce. It is impacting our essence, I think, as women. And I think that's the goal of the conversation today, is how do you feel like you, Steph, as a professional young woman today in this era, do you feel like you are a feminist, and do you feel like you are feminine? And how do you distinguish both?
I thought I was a feminist, but I'm more of a feminine. And I think there's more power when you start tapping into it and understand what it is, because in my essence, in who I am, I'm feminine. So when I was trying to be feminist, something was imbalanced in who I was. I didn't feel like I was actually burned out, tired. Like I had literally, I wasn't, something was off. So I was feeling that imbalance of energies. And it again, I think we should tap into, like, does it have to do with how you dress? Does it have to do with the physical look? Is feminine also like wearing dresses? Or because I believe there was a movement also at some point where women were wearing pants because they wanted to prove that it was. So it is, what's your take on that in terms of is it also on the physical, on what you dress, how you perceive, how you portray yourself, how if you wear makeup or not? Does it have to do with that?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my perspective on it.
Sure.
Some people might agree, some people might not agree with it. I do believe definitely in feminism. I think I want equal rights for women. I do think that socially, culturally, generationally, there's been a lot of trauma when it comes to women. And that's something that we are fighting with in modern feminism, that we need to fight for in modern feminism. So of course, I want women to be able to vote. Of course, I want women to be able to work, to be able to make the same amount of money as men. But when it comes to the modern feminism, my intake on it, I feel like women have been kind of pushed the career perspective in the past decades, since the 60s and 70s. I think women have kind of been pushed the career perspective with good intentions. I think we've been pushing women to be equal as men, to do whatever they want to do. That your career is what defines you, is something that describes who you are, how ambitious you are, and I think there's a lot of value in that. I think that's something that's we should be sharing with girls and women around us. Now, where I think it's becoming a little bit, I'm not gonna say dangerous, but I think where it's becoming kind of hurtful is I think we are in a tangent where it's a little bit too much on that side, and we are losing track of our femininity. And that's because we wanna be able to do everything the same thing men are doing. We want to be able to accomplish. We want to be independent. We want to be able to live, not need anybody, right? That's like kind of like the message we've been shared in the past, decades. And I know that's the message I've received, whether it was from my culture, whether it was from my family, whether it was from society that I live in. like being independent and independence and how important it is, and being able to make it on your own. But when I look deep down inside of me, and when I go back to like what my true nature is, I know that I am a feminine essence, way more than a masculine essence when it comes to the balance of things, right? Like you could say 80% masculine, 80% feminine, 20% masculine, like for example, how I feel about it.
I think
Now,
it's always a balance to a
yeah,
certain, like a grade
yeah.
of where you
Yeah,
are.
and there's no right or wrong in this. You can be naturally someone who's more masculine than feminine. Whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. It's a matter of what is your internal balance, what makes you feel like you are yourself, your best self, and are you true to that? And I believe that in the world that we live in this Western society where feminism has been kind of a fight we've been fighting for so many decades, we have lost touch of our femininity in the name of feminism. And that's what I think is a little bit unfortunate. And I realize that within myself. And I'm also realizing that with a lot of women in my environment, a lot of women that are my age, younger, older, that have gone through that or that are struggling with that at the moment, where they are trying to do everything. They're trying to, to be working full time, going back home, taking care of kids, taking care of the house, taking care of the home, of the family, of the friends. They're like boss bitches. They're doing it all, right? They want to be the best lover, the best partner, and it is exhausting. I think it's extremely exhausting, and I think women are emotionally drained. And I think that at the core, if you go back, it's because this balance of feminine and masculine energy is out of balance, actually. How it's supposed to be within you, if you are being true to yourself, I think is unbalanced at the moment. And I'm speaking for myself. I'm speaking for myself and from people that I've questioned, that I've had this conversation with. I think there's this unbalance that's happening, and it's creating a lot of frustration. It's creating a lot of sadness and pain, and in a lot of women. And I think having this conversation of how do you bring this balance back? How do you stay true yourself? And can you still be a feminist within your feminine essence? And that's where I want to have this conversation.
You see, I think there's as I'm hearing you speak, I sense that there's a mislabeling of the feminist world. It should be just human rights
Yeah.
rather than, because feminist seems more like bringing the masculine energy to the woman. Like independence is more masculine. The hustle, the work, the career, and not that it's good or bad or that it should be there or not or anything. It's just pushing that versus just having equal rights to humans without like labeling it as a feministic movement and putting all women in a category where they should say I'm a feminist because I'm a woman and I should stand for that, or else I don't have rights and I'm not in the right category. So I think that labeling of feminists already there seems to not portray, because we want equal, as we said, like we do want to have a say. We would like to do a bunch of things, to explore, to create, to have the freedom of, but that shouldn't be a feministic movement. It should be just equal rights and allowing us to have the same opportunities. I understand that they name it feminist, but it seems wrong. I don't know. I don't know if
I agree with you. I understand what you're saying, and I think my way kind of yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I agree in the sense that if we want to talk genders, and if we want to talk men and women and talking equality between the two, I think from in my perspective, it's about having equal opportunities,
yeah,
whether you're a man or a woman. I don't care how you identify yourself, whatever kind of human being you are, you should be able to have the same opportunities.
yeah.
Now, when it comes to a woman that's more in her feminine, I'm going to talk about this because in general, women tend to have a higher level of feminine essence versus the masculine essence. And that's why I think, like I said, the unbalance is not happening. Now, I don't think we're having that conversation. And a lot of the times, even if you, like I said, if you ask people around you, if you speak to a lot of women, if you tell them I'm a stay-at-home mom, there's this kind of negative connotation about it, as if you're like not ambitious enough, or if you don't have the same goals as women that are doing it all, right? Like, and if you are working you know, in the professional corporate world, and you don't necessarily want to go up the ranks,
Yeah.
it's also perceived in a negative way. And you might want to go up the ranks and become the best freaking CEO. Go for it. Like, you should have the opportunity to be able to do that if that's your true calling.
Right.
I feel that the calling of women, I don't think women are being true to their calling. That's my perspective. And it is an uncomfortable conversation to have.
Right.
And I'm going to be honest about conversations I've had with a lot of friends that are, you know, whether they're physicians, doctors, pharmacists, in the corporate world, all of the above, and that are very, very successful women that have children or that are in a relationship. And if you ask them, if you had the opportunity to be able to stay at home and be with your child or your children and be the stay-at-home mom, for example, is that something you would want to do? And the answer, 95% of the time, is yes.
Mhm.
But it is said with a low voice,
Yeah.
with not wanting people to hear, with not wanting to share it publicly, as if it's something that's wrong. And I think that's where it's painful to see that. Because if you ask me, I think there's so much beauty, there's so much power, there's so much value in what a feminine essence can bring to a home, to a company, to a family, to friends, to a society, to community. And I find that we are undervaluing that essence for the sake of career and goals and independence and feminism, in a way, modern feminism. And we're not being true to ourselves.
Yeah. And
Like I said, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to end with the sense that some women actually might be more, instead of being, let's say, 80-20, they might be 60-40, 60% feminine, 40% masculine, and want to become the CEO of the next big company. And kudos for that. Like, I'm all for it. It's not about women being submissive or women being not independent or only being stay-at-home moms and depending on a man for them to survive. Or it's not about that. It's actually having the choice to being true to who you are and choosing that route without feeling guilty about it or without feeling like you're not accomplishing something in your life as a woman.
And it seems like the pressure to accomplish, do, and hustle and execute and go is changing what the essence of what women really want. As you said, like it's having that societal influence and saying, like, if you don't have goals, you're being judged. If you don't, and we're seeing it with women having children later and not, and prioritizing career and putting everything on the side and like wanting to be independent and no, I can do it. And I remember, like, in my family hold too, it's like, you're independent, you could do it. Like I know I can do it, but I could be a mom too. And like it's not there's no right or wrong answer to any women. I think it's just to really have this conversation, to allow people to have to think a little bit and say, like, what do I really want? Is it bad to be a stay-at-home mom? And why is it bad? Is it because it's perceived bad, or is it because of the, like, we have financial issues? Is it because there's other things? Like, the why behind it, and really staying true to who you are and what you want, and that there's no right or wrong. Like, being a mom is as precious and as beautiful as being a CEO. There's no better or worse, it's just different. And that's what society's not like. They're pushing the pedestal on the careers, they're pushing the pedestal on everything, where it puts the mom in a category where she would feel kind of incompetent or not enough, and like having that low self-worth just because she's being a mom, which is already huge. So it's like bringing a new human to earth, but it's not enough. You gotta do more, and you gotta prove the feministic movement, and you gotta equal pay, and you like, and we can dive into like the little, there are things that are positive about the, and I won't say the feministic because I don't like it anymore. I would say the equal rights, where, okay, we gotta, like, it's not fair if we're doing the same job that we're not paid equal. It's not fair. Like, those things are just human basics. For me, it doesn't even have to do with gender. It's like, if you're black or woman or a color or Asian or whatever, you should, like, it doesn't have to do with that. It's just treating humans, any type, any color, any gender, the same way. So it's not a feminist, for me, it's just a human right, equality, and that I'm for. But all the rest, where it's putting everything else on a pedestal versus cherishing and being home with your family, is imbalancing a lot of women. And I had this conversation with a friend recently, and she was asking me about career challenges. I'm like, but what do you want? And the first thing she said, she's like, I want to be a mom. I'm like, you're asking me about career, but the first thing you say is not about like career. So it creates that, and it makes people realize like, oh, actually, I think I want to be a mom first, and then career, and it's okay. So it's yeah, that's my take on this.
Yeah, I think it's bringing back the healthy conversation about making your own road, making your own
Yeah.
way with that, and not feeling shameful or feeling judged about it. And but one thing I do want to point out, and I think that that's important to speak of, and when it comes to modern feminism, and when in the 60s and 70s women started working and were able to have the same opportunities, were able to have, they were fighting for those opportunities, right? And that I think it's great that we have those opportunities today. But there is a reality today that not all women can be at home. And in most couples and most unions and most families, both people have to be working to be able to provide decently, let's say, to their families. And that's also a reality we have to live with, because sometimes you might want to be able to do that and you're being true to yourself about it, but it's also not necessarily realistically possible financially, economically, like socially, because you have responsibilities that you have to attend. And I think that modern feminism somehow created that imbalance too, where we don't have those options as much as before, where we have to be in the workforce. And not that all women don't want to be in the workforce. I think a lot of women want to be in the workforce, but it became a necessity for a family for both people to be working. In a couple, for example, where you have a woman that's more in her masculine essence and a man that's more in his feminine essence, when they have this good polarity and they have this good balance between the two of them, maybe it's the man that would want to stay home, and that's amazing. Why not? But do they have that option? And it's becoming very, very difficult to have that option. So that's also something we have to take into account. So there is this social kind of pressure to do it, where we're kind of like conditioned as women, as young professionals, to kind of go into the workforce and be career driven and be independent and all this. And we go into it and we're like fighting it, like we're ready. But we also have that calling inside of us. I think most women that are in their feminine essence, majority, and a majority, want to be able to also have the option of being a stay-at-home moms, for example, or maybe being more artistic and more creative with their skills and kind of go into that route. But the reality is it's not necessarily possible too. So how do we deal with this? Like, there's also this duality that I think is very difficult at the moment, where we don't necessarily always have the option of taking that option.
I think, my mindset. So I would be like, everything's possible. I think it's just a way of putting it on paper and seeing maybe there's something else underneath that is a misbelief that is blocking the possibilities. So it's either like there's a bunch of different things, because if you have a child, then you have to pay for school, you have to pay, like there's a bunch of things to pay too. And if you stay home and then you homeschool, like there's so many options, and maybe it's just the lack of knowledge that is not allowing them. And nowadays everyone can work from home, so like it's that too. There's always, I think we are reaching, there's a pressure in society, and I think if that's the issue of like, oh, I can't, I think there's something underneath that is a bigger issue in terms of misbelief, in terms of opportunity, of knowledge, of realizing that there's other things people can do to change how they want to live because they can. I do want to pinpoint something where we do, like, I think we both have a calling of motherhood and like wanting children, but some women don't want children. And what's your take on that? If a woman doesn't want, and she just wants to have a career and does not want children, is that more?
I think that's definitely a personal choice. I don't think all women should be having children. Not all women can have children as well. Does that mean that you've missed your calling and you're going to be miserable your whole life? Of course not. I think as long as you're being true to yourself, that's what's important. And as long as being true to yourself early on, when you have options, because that's something to take into account. Because we don't want to talk about the clock ticking, but it's a reality, and that's something you have to take into account. So I think as if women are being true to themselves and to what they truly want, if it means having children, go ahead, have 10 if you want. If it means not having children and being, CEO or be whatever, working something else, being creative, touring the world, that's a beautiful calling too. As long as you're true to your calling, that's what I think is the most important part. Because at the end of the day, you live with yourself. So if you're not happy within yourself, you're not going to be happy in this world, no matter what circumstances you're in or situations you're in.
And I think it's just to remind the audience that femininity is not about like having children, being a mom, and like there's not it's not a category, and it's not like you have to do that to be considered feminine. So that's why I brought this up, because you could be in your feminine and not have children and express your femininity in a different way. So it's all about balance and knowing your essence, as you said, and understanding that it's a balance of energy rather than just being in a category and having to, the same way we don't want to apply the feministic category, we like the femininity also is not a category, it's just an energy and how you sense, and as long as you feel that it's right and everyone has a different ratio, then it's you.
Exactly. And I'm happy you brought this back. That's a very good point, because I think we did put a lot of emphasis on the nurturing part, and on which is one aspect of a feminine essence. And I think we can all agree on that one, but doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have children to be nurturing. You can be taking care of other children. You can be taking care of people. You can be taking care of patients. You can be taking care of, your parents. It could be a lot of different types of nurturing. You can also be very creative and be an artist. You can be, there's so many ways of exploring and expressing your femininity. And I think that it's just being, like I said, true to yourself and allowing yourself to kind of go through that, to flow through that. A feminine essence is movement, it's flow, it's intuition, it's love, it's all of those beautiful things. And you can express that in so many ways. You can also express that as a CEO in a super high position and still bring that intuitive side of you, like of you as a woman, and be extremely successful. So it's not one or the other. Femininity is not just being a stay-at-home mom and that's it. You can be, like I said, you can be a CEO and still be extremely feminine in your approach and how you are with your team, and you are still being true to yourself. So it's just kind of bringing that conversation where we listen to what we truly are and we apply it in whatever opportunity we decide to take.
I'm trying to detach from that societal pressure.
Yeah.
What we should be as humans.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. Thank you, Natalie, for sharing this.
Sure.
We'll speak more about this topic, so don't hesitate to send us an email if you have any questions or a topic to explore. We'll wrap up with maybe one thing to leave the audience with. Do you want to go for it? Go ahead.
What I would like to share just before we close is I would like to hear people's opinions on this. I would like to have their input. So if you can leave your comments, leave your, you can agree, disagree with us. I'm happy to take it all in and learn also. I think we're here to open a conversation, to share our perspectives of it, but also kind of take other people's opinions and other people's perspectives. And I think that that's how you grow. I'm always open for that. So I'm looking forward to seeing people give us their feedback. But the one thing I can leave you with, I think, is something I repeated throughout this podcast, but you know who you are. Listen to who you truly are and listen to that intuition that you have inside of you. And when you feel something is true to you, follow that. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you guys for tuning in, and make sure to subscribe. See you at the next podcast. Bye.